What's going on, you guys? James with the School of HardKnocks. We're here with Robert Miller, an awesome entrepreneur who's out here in Florida. And my first question for you, man, how long have you been an e-commerce business owner for?
So I've been in the e-commerce game for about 6-7 years now. Originally first got started in e-commerce actually doing Amazon. I was doing Amazon dropshipping back in like 2017. And at the same time I was learning marketing. So then I hopped into some ClickFunnels stuff, selling free leggings and free trinkets and things like that, and doing dropshipping funnels. And then from there, then I did Shopify stores, did my own dropshipping stores, did some brands. And then around that same time, I had the agencies as well. And I was working on plenty of big brands, stuff that we scaled from literally just a few $1,000s a month in revenue to millions of dollars within a few years. Companies that were doing about $500,000 a year to scaling them to 10 million in 2 years, brands from 1 million to 6 million in like 7 months, all in different categories. So whether it was skincare, card games, home goods and home services, did a lot of different e-commerce products over my years.
Right. And so when you think about the e-commerce industry, it's very competitive, right? 90% of people that start a business in e-commerce, it's going to fail after a few months. Mm-hmm. Where do you think most people go wrong? What is the most common mistake that you see new e-commerce business owners make that prevents them from scaling a profitable business? That's
a really good question. So I think it boils down first to the 3 different sectors of e-commerce, or the 3 different ways that I look at how people can get traffic, because that's the biggest issue. People don't know how to use the internet to sell things. They're either really good with social content, or they want to take advantage of more marketplace type of algorithms like Amazon or like Facebook Marketplace, or any one of these ones that are a bit more algorithmic in nature. And so the first one I always talk about is, again, marketplace selling. So that's your eBays, that's your Amazons, that's your Walmarts, and that's like your Wayfairs, right? Big websites with these indexed product categories. Then you have the social kind of direct-to-consumer market, where you're responsible for bringing all the traffic. So you set up a beautiful Shopify store. You can either drop ship products, you can make your own brand, you can make your own products, but you're responsible for driving all of the traffic. So if you suck at Google ads, getting interest on social media, or knowing how to play the game, you're not going to get anyone to the website, because if it's the most beautiful website and the best product, but nobody knows about it, your bank account's going to say 0, right? And so then the last one, which is a little bit more trendy and algorithmic in nature, is like a social commerce, more of a in-app function. And we're seeing that really pop off with TikTok shops right now, where the e-commerce function is inside the app and inside of the platform. And the reason that actually started to become about was because Facebook made some changes around COVID, Facebook made some changes around 2020, where iOS 14 had come out. And so they had to change the way that they were gathering data. And so instead of having all the tracking being dependent on your website or whatever, they want to try and keep all those purchases inside the platform. So that's why they came out with that functionality.
Right. Now, in e-commerce today, what sector do you think is going to be the hottest, fastest growing market over the next 5 to 10 years? Like, do you think that there's a particular place or sector in e-commerce that's going to make a lot of people successful if they can really crack into that sector?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always think that if you're a great marketer, you will always be able to sell the product that you choose. So whether that's home goods, whether that's a skincare, or whether that's even fashion and clothing. Like, if you're a great marketer, you can always do that. There's the other side of the quote unquote e-commerce economy that you can take advantage of, that are a bit more of the household stapled goods. So this is where, if you're just starting out, you don't have money to spend on ads, you don't have money to waste, I would recommend going into branded FBA, where you're buying branded products. You're not having to create your own brand or anything like that. You can get authorized to sell them, put them on your very own Amazon store. And because these big brands like Starbucks, Nike, Pampers, all these big brands, they already do marketing and people know them, and people are going to need diapers so long that they have kids. Then that you tap into that ecosystem and tap into that demand. So instead of having to be a good marketer being on the demand side, you can be on the supply side. And so that's what a lot of people really like to do, just because there's not as much risk of content. There's not as much risk of what if that product doesn't sell and I have to do the marketing and I just wasted money on both fronts, So that's the safer route. It's not as profitable with creating your own brand because you can make your margins however you want. You can say, I made a $3 t-shirt, but I'm charging $200 for it. Like, you can make up the margin. So that's just the power of having a brand. But if you want to be a bit more stable in that space, then FBA and usually using Amazon is the best way to go.
Right. Now, for someone who's starting out in e-commerce today, a big struggle that people have is finding that winning product. If it's like a certain measurement or a test that you've ran with all the e-commerce companies that you've built and work with, what's your advice to someone when it comes to finding that winning product that can sell for millions of dollars?
Yeah. So it's easier to be a part of the trend than trying to create your own trend. So as lame as that sounds, you want to follow the graph. Like, just follow the graph, follow the trends. And when you're early on a trend and you see it starting to spike, you'll have millions of dollars sold of a product that you didn't have to work for, as long as you put the positioning in and you spent the ads that you were going to anyways, because it's the timing of a product. If you did pickleball 5 years ago, no one really knew what that was. Maybe you're too early. Pickleball has been popping off over the past year. So I know a lot of buddies of mine that have gone and started their own pickleball brands. And just because more attention is going there and it's trendy, people are actually buying pickleball paddles and pickleball gear and all that kind of stuff. It's like a new thing. So it's best to tap into culture with that kind of stuff, or constant staples around transformation. So we see this with supplements all the time. We see this with skincare all the time. The thing with those markets, though, you have to have a unique mechanism to actually either niche down or solve that specific issue. So my business partner, Los, he's helped scale out so many different fitness products. I've done more so the skincare stuff, but every single mechanism of burning fat or every single mechanism of that nootropic's going to be better or whatever it is, that is the mechanism, the USP is what they call it in marketing, that makes the price worth the price, makes the margin that you have even, there in the first place, so you can spend more on marketing, but then makes the product even better because you can use that profit to reinvest back into product or be able to siphon it off for yourself.
Yeah. And like, at what point do you, as an e-commerce business owner, know that it's time to pivot or maybe switch to a different product, right? So let's say you start that business, you're not getting those results that you want. How long do you wait until you tell yourself, hey, it's time to pivot, this isn't working?
That's a good question. And, pivoting is one of the biggest things that most business owners don't do soon enough, especially in the e-commerce space. E-commerce, you have to buy products ahead of time. You can only drop ship for so long because when you're scaling at millions of dollars a month in product, let's say it's a beauty skin line, for example, you have to have that product on demand or change your front end marketing to say, hey, pre-order now and do some sort of drop method. If you can't get supply fast enough through your inventory lead times, you can miss out on windows of opportunity to make a lot of money. So it's the same thing even with high ticket business owners where, hey, you can only scale as much as you have availability for your sales calls for your sales reps. You can't book 1,000 appointments if you have 2 reps. Like, it ain't going to work. Same thing with ecom. You can't sell and expect to sell millions and millions of dollars of product unless they're framed. It's a kickstarting fundraise or a pre-order or a pre-sale, right? Because you don't want a bunch of unhappy customers. And expect that the logistics aren't going to have some growing pains. So I do think that first it's understanding that timeline and that cycle, because some people, they may think that they have demand, but if it takes them 6 months to get product, that business needs to pivot, or the logistics, you need to figure that out before you actually try and go scale. And then the second is most businesses, if brand isn't differentiating the product enough, it's a race to zero, meaning they're going to go between you and me. If we have the same shirt or whatever, we both like style. Why would they choose this one over yours? It has to be brand, or else it's just a knit polo or a knit shirt or whatever it is. So if they're the exact same thing, you're just going to buy the cheaper one. That just makes sense, right? And so you have to then start to differentiate. And if you can't find that differentiation and your margins are going down as supply costs are going up, you either have to find what that differentiation is, or you just got to pivot and scrap it and just find another area or another sector or another product that you can differentiate better.
Awesome. I'll just do 2 more questions on ecom and then we'll talk about crypto for a little bit. So my next question for you, you hear the quote in business all the time, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And a big problem, a lot of the time business owners, they struggle with scaling a business. So for someone who's, maybe they're able to hit $20,000, $30,000 a month consistently, but they really want to scale to 6 figures. what is your secret to scaling, especially in a competitive industry like e-commerce? What's the biggest thing that you implement throughout your e-commerce businesses to be able to scale them from maybe that 5 to 6, 7-figure mark or 6 to 7-figure mark? What's the secret to scaling a business?
Yeah. So for e-com specifically, there's 3 stages to get there. There's the 0 to 30K, the 30 to 80K, and then the 80 to 250K per month. And those 3 stages, the 0 to 30K is really dialing in what that product is and how fast you can get inventory. Because a lot of times when you're getting a new idea or you're starting a new brand, you may negotiate with the suppliers and say, hey, let me try and sell some first before we do a big inventory run, because you want to be conservative with your capital. So 0 to 30 is really that product testing and the differentiation phase. Now, when you get between 30 to 80K, you need to invest a lot more into content. And I don't see enough business owners do this. This is typically their downfall, because once they start making 30, 40, 50, they think they can take that into their pocket. That is the wrong time to do it. You have to double down onto the content, because one video, let's say, got you to 40K. That thing is going to die out guaranteed within the next month to 2 months, because if you're already at that stage and you're bootstrapping things together, you don't have a high production video. It's not that big, right? So you have to understand where you're at, especially if you're bootstrapping, because that 30 to 80K range, you have to invest into content. And this is typically where people look to bring on an advertising agency, and that can make or break your business. So if the agency doesn't have that structure in place of knowing where to financially guide you, then you have to figure that out on your own. And if you've never been there before, then chances are that you're going to mismanage cash flows. You're not going to invest in the right things. So again, investing into content, ads, and product. Those are the 3 things that you want to invest in at that time. Then when you get past 80K, then you have to double down on the ad spend, because at that time, you probably have already the content that works. You have the product or the website that works. Now you need volume. And this is the range where I tell my clients that work with us on the e-commerce side, this is where you can start taking off profits, because the next stage is 250K to 500K per month. And that is a whole nother ballgame. Beyond that is 500K to $1 million a month. And there's different tiers to the logistics and the infrastructure, et cetera. And so that 80 to 250K is a really good spot to get to, where you can start siphoning off profits while having the business still grow and while having your inventory still be able to turn over.
Great answer. And I wanted to talk a little bit about branding. When you take a look at a company like Apple could launch a new pair of shoes. Apple could launch a dog collar, and they will have hundreds of millions of people lining up to buy their product because of the emphasis and the brand that they've built. So, what's your advice to someone when it comes to really building a strong brand beyond just 1 or 2 or just a few products that they're selling? Like, how important is it really to build a brand and beyond just the product? Like, what is the importance of putting the emphasis on a brand when you were starting a company in e-commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the story. And a lot of marketers will call that the hook or the angle of which it is sold. And what it really just comes down to is how well are you able to connect with that audience that you're trying to bring in. Apple and the iPhone, and that's a really, really broad product, right? So many people have them, and they've gone mass market. But if you notice, all of their commercials have different races, have different age groups. It's all inclusive, and it's not just for some agenda type of thing. They're trying to bring in a mass market. But if you look at some of the niche brands that we've scaled, we only serve maybe one ethnicity and one age group, right? And so you can tap into those different pockets to build brand. You just have to decide, who do you want your ideal customer to be? They're out there. It's not a matter of not being able to get them. It's what would that person be attracted to? So are they in Miami or are they in Texas? 2 different totally markets. I've lived in both. The cultures are totally different. So you gotta know those subcultures and what they're going to be drawn to, then be able to speak that language. And so I think the biggest thing with brand is if you're going for everyone, a lot of times you're talking to no one. So first dial in those first couple avatars, and then go wider, and then start to develop a mission that's bigger than you. Because if you are in it for the long term and you're trying to build brand like Apple, you have to have that 10, 20, 30 year time horizon without being delusional.
I love it. It's all about the story. But let's shift to crypto a little bit. So my first question, how long have you been investing in cryptocurrency for? What year did you make your first investment in crypto?
So I first got invested into crypto in around 2016. I got introduced to it by my brother's friend. And this guy had thousands of these Bitcoins. And we're like, what the heck is this thing, man? Why do you have thousands of them? He had 1,500 at the time. And he's like, no, this is going to be the next big thing. Trust me, dude. Trust me, bro. We're like, okay, whatever. A few months go by. Bitcoin was maybe like $600. And he came back and he's like, dude, look how many Bitcoins I got. And he had like 15,000. We were like, dude, that's a lot of money. $600, 15,000. That's crazy, man. Like, what are you doing to get them? He was mining, he was playing like RuneScape, and he was pretty early in the whole deal. But then when I started to invest into it, it was $1,200 and then $1,500. And then it went to $3,000 and $6,000 and $10,000. And soon enough, it was at like 17 or 19,000. And during that time, a bunch of buddies were like giving me money to invest into Bitcoin for them and teaching them how to do it. So I built this personal brand out of it. But the original guy that introduced us into Bitcoin, gone, like fell off the face of the earth. So I don't know if he sold them at 17K or if he waited to the next bull run where it got to 69K. But I know he did pretty well for himself.
That's incredible. And for someone who in today's world, maybe they don't understand crypto, or they do, but they don't believe in the blockchain, what would you tell them, right? What is your advice to someone in regards to cryptocurrency? Do you think it is the future of investing? Do you think it will really become a global currency where it's used by countries throughout the entire world?
Absolutely. It already is. And because look, dude, everything is a Ponzi. The US dollar is a Ponzi. The Chinese yuan is a Ponzi. Everything is a Ponzi because there's mechanisms that print these things and we work for these things. If someone can print something that you're working for, then it devalues that thing. That's basic, right? So the thing that Bitcoin maximalists love about Bitcoin, where they kind of go over the top a little bit with it, is that there's a finite supply. So there's no more that can be printed ever. And the supply every single 4 years, because of something called the halving or the halving event, it cuts the supply of newly rewarded Bitcoin. So it only becomes more scarce over time rather than it being continuously printed or continuously being controlled when it comes to the money supply or the amount of it in circulation. So I'm a big Bitcoin believer, not necessarily as an inflation hedge, more of a monetary debasement hedge. And if you haven't read, there's books that talk about this where governments, since the dawn of time, have printed their money's value away. And in fact, the US dollar has gone down just over the past few years by about 40-50% because we printed 40-50% of it. But all other currencies have printed more. So ours has gone down less in value relative to other currencies, but it still has gone down in value. So that's why Bitcoin is not only a great store of wealth, but something that is a hedge against the replacement of currencies like BRICS and the US dollar that are happening right now.
For the average person who may be watching this, they may have no idea how cryptocurrency works. Who controls or who backs cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so Bitcoin is backed by its participants. So there's a network of computers that verifies transactions. So if I'm looking to send you a Bitcoin, it will go from my phone to your phone through something called a wallet. And when I hit send, kind of like an email where it has to go through, it sends over the internet and goes to your inbox. Same kind of deal works where these computers will verify the transaction. They'll say, hey, Robert's got some Bitcoin. All right, it's broadcasted to this network. Yep, he does have that Bitcoin. And yes, this is a legitimate address. It'll send it over to you. And for doing that, those computers get rewarded new Bitcoin. So instead of us relying on Visa or MasterCard to do this verification for us, and we pay that 2 or 3% fee, that fee just goes to the person that verified the transaction. And so Bitcoin allows people to transact peer-to-peer. And the best part is I didn't have to ask for permission to any bank or any middleman to send you that money. If I wanted to send it to you, I can send it to you. And the middleman is another individual or another company that has mining infrastructure or mining computers, and we're able to transact freely. So it kind of cuts out all the overhead that's in all these banks, the buildings, the branch managers, all this stuff in order to get a transaction to go through. I don't know if you've tried to send a wire recently, especially with all these bank failures, man. Dude, it's taken 7 to 10 days to send wires with even some of these big banks, dude, just to move 10 grand, just to move 50 grand, 100 grand. With Bitcoin, I can send you $2 million and it takes 2 hours max, because it gets broadcasted instantly after the verifications and everything is done. So the speed and the frequency of money picking up is happening right now. And so the banks are trying to slow it down and not have Bitcoin and all these other cryptocurrencies take over their monetary network controls.
Right. And so for someone who is ready to take that leap, they want to start getting into cryptocurrency, What do you recommend to them as far as when they're starting to build that portfolio in crypto? Do you think that there's just a couple coins that they should really be focusing on that's going to make a lot of people a lot of money? Or do you think that you should really be dispersed throughout all the different coins out there? What are your thoughts on building a portfolio within cryptocurrency?
Yeah, sure thing. So that's exactly what my partners and I do. We have the crypto fund. And so that's, part of why people come to us for it. But with the first recommendation I give people is if you're new to Bitcoin or new to crypto, just buy Bitcoin, buy $5 of it, send it to your friend, send it to your mom, just send it back and forth and see the power of how this thing actually works. Yes, you can go invest into it later and stuff like that, but first use it. And then once you kind of get into the space and you're more comfortable with the technology and you know what self-custodying means and cold wallet means and all that, that's when you can start going down the rabbit hole of what is Ethereum like? What is Casper like? What is Quant like? Like, what are the reasons that these projects are popping off, or why is there money going into these projects? And you can start to understand the second and third order belief systems from actually using Bitcoin in the first place, because it all starts there. That's what birthed the entire industry.
Okay, cool. And my final question for you is, you hear there's a lot more than just crypto investing. There's crypto mining, and there's all these different ways to create wealth in crypto. But what would you say has been your blueprint or your secret to creating wealth in the cryptocurrency industry? And how can someone really get started creating wealth in crypto today?
Yeah. So the easiest way to create wealth over time is to be in the proven asset inside the crypto space that has not had security scrutiny, that has not had issues with other regulations, which is Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been around and people continue to buy into the network. It has plenty of infrastructure around it. And so Bitcoin is one of those unique assets in which that the US government sees it as a commodity. So it's not under securities law. It's not under any of this other regulatory concern that people are usually kind of worried about. Whereas other crypto tokens and other crypto projects that may be pump and dumps or shit coins or whatever, if you participate in a lot of those and you were participating in the wrong ones, rather, people are coming after you. And so the easiest way to ensure wealth is by buying Bitcoin, primarily because it's the only one that has stood the test of time. It has gone through regulatory, quote unquote, scrutiny already, and it has only been a hedge towards monetary debasement, and it has proven to compound and keep your buying power over time. Whereas other tokens, maybe they were hot one run, but now they're worth zero the next run, right? So worst case scenario, keep your money into Bitcoin. There are cycles, though, in Bitcoin. It is about every 4 years where you'll see 3 years of a bull run and 1 year of a bear market. So if you're trying to trade in and out, you just got to know those cycles so that way that you're not buying things at the wrong time and potentially losing it all.
Awesome. Sounds good. So for everyone watching this right now, Rob, where can everybody find you at?
You can find me at the Robert J. Miller. On Instagram, or you can check out some of my companies here. We have tradewithspot.com. We also have a couple other companies like Creator Ads that we help a lot of e-commerce brands grow and scale. If you want help getting involved into the e-commerce space, you can hit us up at automatedretailcommerce.com.